Hello and welcome to the Emperor's Rejects, your podcast about all things 40K. I'm your host Kuyo with your co-host
Foster, y'all.
And we are going to jump on the hype train that is contrast paints, and we're going to be talking about contrast paints and different techniques that make painting easier.
Yeah, I think that for a lot of people, one of the biggest things that prohibits them, well, not even prohibits, but inhibits them from getting into the hobby is their fear of painting. And so we're going to be talking to you guys today about some things that we've done that have made our painting game better and easier as we've gone through this hobby.
Yeah. As many 40K fans have, there is a huge backlog of gray plastic staring me down at this moment. In my closet, I have way too many packages of shrink wrap models. So painting, it can be a chore, but it's also something that I enjoy.
Yeah. Well, and I like it too. I just don't always have the time. I know that you and I both have come up with some techniques over the years that have made things just a wee bit easier for us.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to bang the drum that a lot of painters are doing right now and talk about the glory that is airbrushing.
You can talk about that. I'm going to talk about our Lord and Savior contrast.
I actually haven't tried out my contrast paint yet. I picked up the ultramarine contrast paint, and I also picked up the gray primer.
It's been a game changer for me, but I think we should, because the big daddy of all of this is airbrushing, and I think that you should talk to our fans, our loyal subjects, about airbrushing real quick, because I can't help you with that.
Well, airbrushing is something that a lot of people are finally turning over to. I think it's pretty. It can be daunting for new painters. I'm not even gonna lie myself. I bought an airbrush and I used it for maybe 5 minutes, got it clogged, and couldn't get a correct stream of air through it. End up thinking that I broke it. End up buying another airbrush, painted for maybe 10 minutes, and then did the same thing. Then I set down my airbrushes for maybe a year and a half.
Yeah, I remember that. You actually had that caution tape set off to the side. Nobody was allowed in that corner.
Yeah, that was a no-no corner full of disappointment and old paint.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I got the Iwata Eclipse, a friend let me borrow it, and that's when I actually got my grip on airbrushing. My first airbrush was actually the Soltar 2020, which has a super, super small needle. Like, if I remember correctly, the Soltar is like a 15 millimeter or 20 millimeter needle. So for a beginner, it was super hectic. Like, if anyone asked me, I would say that's probably not the best brush to get if you're just jumping into the airbrush game.
Yeah.
But the Eclipse, you can pick it up from Hobby Lobby. You can pick it up from Michaels. It's a 35 millimeter needle, the one that I use, and it's big enough so that you can do vehicles. You're small enough that you can get the detail in on regular soldiers, and I love it. Also, one thing that was huge for me, I've got big hands. Okay, I'm a big dude, big hands. Been that way since I was a little kid, so I couldn't actually clean out the reservoir on a Soltar 2020s because it was so small. So it was actually easier for me to clean things with the Eclipse. So that was just like a small little plus that just made using the device more compatible with me.
But, well, and I mean, you gotta always use the tools that are appropriate for you. You know, it's if you're not comfortable with the tool, no use in using it. You know.
Yeah. And I think once anyone gets the hang of basic skills with airbrushing, it becomes a brand new world for painting. You can do so many things faster and more efficient with airbrushing than you can with a normal brush, and there's effects that you can get tenth of the time it would take to try to wet blend it using regular brush techniques. So I think once most people get over their hurdle of basic things with an airbrush, it's a game changer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just looking at some of the things that you've been able to do with your airbrush, some things that other artists have been able to do with their airbrush. I look at that and I think to myself, that is something that would take so much skill with a brush that you might as well just go out and invest the money in the airbrush itself and do it a lot quicker.
Yeah. So I would suggest anyone who wants to learn more techniques with painting to pick up an airbrush. Now the thing is, the airbrush doesn't completely replace normal brushwork. You still go want to use your normal brushes. It's just another tool in the toolkit. But for me, this is one of the best investments I've ever done, and time wise and money wise, and it has made me enjoy painting just that much more.
Now, I think there is one other thing that we need to talk about when it comes to the airbrush that I don't think a lot of people think about. Your painting is really dependent on where you live and when you can get things done. What I mean by that is that if you live in a humid area, you know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to can I prime it?
Yeah.
Rattle cans in the humidity turns things into kind of a clumpy, goopy mess, and it's really bad. The nice thing about the airbrush is that you can literally put some primer through the airbrush, and you don't have to wait for the weather to be good. You can prime whenever you want.
I actually did the exact same thing last night. I decided to use my rattle can, just to knock out some stuff real quick. And it was raining outside. So instead, I went up to my airbrush setup, put the models down there, and just primed them right there and laughed at the rain. I scoffed at it from the inside of my house.
Yeah. And see, for me, I live in an apartment. So, I go out and I do my rattle cans on our balcony. And when that happens, if it's raining, I'm like, yeah, there's nothing I can do today. There will be no painting.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just opens up a whole new world of possibilities. And I would sing the Aladdin song, but I don't think you guys are ready for that. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Whole
Well,
new world.
uh,
But go ahead, tell us about our new Lord and Savior that is contrast paint.
I absolutely love contrast paints. It's one of those things that for me, I will occasionally try to get a model looking tabletop ready, not absolutely gorgeous, but tabletop ready because I want to test things out, but I don't want it to look bare plastic sometimes. And contrast paints for me in this instance are a complete game changer. Um, there are some things that you can do with them. You got to experiment with them is the big thing. You want to be careful over the flat surfaces of things because they have a tendency to pool in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's been one of those, as long as I know where the flat surface is and I'm paying attention, it's sped up my painting considerably.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people do well with skin tones and other textured things like a lizard or tree bark or something like that.
Well, I'm doing right now my Imperial Guard army with the contrast, and it has made things so much easier with the guard stuff. Just kind of getting that green into the ruffles of the cloaks and the fabric and whatnot. Just it would have taken hours to get all these guys done. I'm literally just kind of brush done, brush done. Your armor is all safe and sound, and life is good.
Yeah.
But there is something that I've seen a couple people doing, and I really enjoyed as well, and that is your contrast paints over metallics.
Okay.
For a while there, I was doing a kill team of Alpha Legion, of loyal Primaris Alpha Legion, created by Kahl on Mars to destroy the enemies of the Imperium with their... Anyway, if you look at Alpha Legion, they've got shiny, metallic, kind of turquoise armor.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get that original effect, what I was doing with it was a gray primer,
Okay.
followed up by a silver, and then a back and forth of Guilliman blue and Wayfarer green.
Mm-hmm.
But it would take forever because you had to wait for the Guilliman blue to stop, and then you had to go onto the green and then go back to the blue, then go back to the green and build those colors up. I was literally spending 45 minutes to an hour on a marine.
Yeah.
And that's the saddest thing I've ever done. Like on a base marine. And I literally did this earlier today. I went ahead and before we started recording for the show today, I spray painted one of my guys gold with my Krylon.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally just slathered it on, and I got a better effect doing it that way than I did with my old building up of the glazes.
Oh, really now?
Yeah. It's lustrous, it's beautiful. It, as long as you are not like just dipping the entire model into the thing and saying it's good to go, and you're trying to at least use some brush control, it works out fine. It's great. That gold underneath that I used really kind of creates this nice metallic effect with the turquoise, and it almost looks like it's got a shimmer effect to it. I really like it. I've seen people do the same thing with the Blood Angels red over silver to create kind of that candy finish thing, and I've seen people making fun of it. Oh no, look out, the Hot Rod Marines are here. Wow. But I do want to direct you to Iron Man, literally the death machine from the skies, Iron Man, and Hot Rod red and gold.
So you're saying I should make a Iron Man Primaris Force?
I think you should.
Okay.
Yeah, funny thing is, you could do it with War Machine too, because that black looks really good over a light gray primer.
What colors did you pick up?
I actually picked up the turquoise, the Creed camo, and I picked up a flesh shade. I will say this with the flesh shade is that you will probably still want to maybe dry brush, which we'll talk about that technique here in a moment. Just to vary up your flesh tones. Mm-hmm. You may still want to dry brush different flesh tones over it. For a quick and easy, it's very good. I've noticed that if you put it over a gray primer, the flesh tones look darker. Mm-hmm. And if you put it over a white primer, you're going to get more of a Caucasian look.
Gotcha.
A tanned Caucasian look, but still a Caucasian look. Mm-hmm. But I think I know I didn't get the Guilliman flesh shade because it had the word Guilliman on it.
Haters gonna hate.
I can't do it, and you know that. There's only one Primarch, and he's on the World of Sorcerers beating them up and taking their lunch money.
Well, we'll see that if he ever gets a model in 40K. Oh!
In the fields and in the gun. So, but yeah, no, I really do think that if you are a new painter, if you are new to the painting game, the contrast paints are going to be very good for you. Put them on thickly, but you don't want to drown your model. Make sure that that when you prime them, that you do it in a lighter color. Now I know that some people are using the specific Games Workshop brand primers. I've heard some people using a satin primer from another company. I personally am just using the Krylons that I have here now before I go out and buy more paint. And they've been working out very, very well. I very much enjoyed them. But I think the biggest thing with the contrast paints, just like with any painting scheme, is to experiment. Mm-hmm. Experiment. It's for any new painter, it's the best thing that I can tell you to do.
Mm-hmm. All right, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm down. I want to try out some contrast paint myself. I think in the next coming days, I'm gonna go ahead and just mess around with it. I don't know if it's gonna be completely change anything that I'm doing, but it'll be fun to experiment.
I will say this: contrast paints for me, you're not going to win Golden Demon. You're not going to win Crystal Brush with contrast paint. That's not what they were developed for. And I think right now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but right now with your commission works, you're looking at getting things a bit more detailed, a bit more done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
For me, where the contrast paint truly shines is, are you looking to get something on a table?
Yeah.
Are you wanting it to look halfway decent? Are you wanting it to be something where you don't have the old screaming Marine meme where it's like, my flesh, then contrast paints are going to be for you. You can paint them on a bit thicker. They go into the recesses. They look good. They create natural shades and shapes, but they're not going to get you. The contrast paint itself is not something that will replace skin. It is something that will get you a tabletop ready army in a couple of days with some dedication, depending on how many models you have.
But Foster, I can shoot the contrast paint through an airbrush. It's like a fusion.
Tell me how that works out for you, because I don't know how that would work.
No, I've seen an artist do it. Like, actually, my favorite artist, he showed him painting some Sylvaneth models using airbrush and the contrast paint.
How did it turn out?
Oh, it was badass. But he's also one of the best painters in the world.
Yeah,
he used Zenithal highlights on some wings of a Sylvaneth model, and then used the Nurgle's rot, I believe, to give it like this greenish black to white effect. It was pretty badass. It was amazing.
Okay. Well, I will take your word for it.
Yeah.
But like I said, for me, I look at it, and I think that the contrast paints are probably, if you are a brand new painter, just from my experience with the contrast paints, I like them. I like them a lot. In fact, I think that when our store gets more of the Black Templar in, I'm actually going to go back and pick them more. Because there are a couple colors that just, they sold like day of gone. I think Black Templar was one of them. I know that Blood Angels was one of them.
I would assume the white color would be the same thing.
Yeah, because white is the absolute worst color to paint.
No, it's not, bro.
Yes, it is. It is. Don't you lie to these new painters. Do not give them false hope.
I don't know. Painting white and yellow is super easy.
Painting white and yellow was created by the devil to trick man into subservience.
Well, just wait. I'm going to paint like 7 more knights in my blue, white, and red scheme.
You torture yourself that way. Hey, you want to know how I paint white, Kuyo?
How's that?
Spray paint bottle.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah, I if I want it white, I choose my white primer, and the parts that I want white, I don't paint those.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I guess now we should talk about the ultimate technique.
The one that will rule them all.
Are you ready?
I don't know if they're ready.
Every painter should be using this technique.
Yeah.
Dry brushing.
So dry.
So dry brushing is a technique that it is a beginner level technique, but I promise you, if you're going to be painting models at some point, you're going to still be using it. Like it's just amazing. If you don't understand, dry brushing is a technique where you put paint on a brush. You use something like a napkin or towel, and you rub off most of the paint on the brush so that it's slightly on there when you rub it against something, and you will dry brush it over a model, and it'll pick out the edges.
Yeah, that's it.
It sounds simple, but it gives you a beautiful effect on many different things. I mean, I just put out a tutorial yesterday where I dry brushed the tracks of my wyvern. Did I say wyvern?
Wyvern.
Damn it! Those people made me say the incorrect name again.
Jesus.
Wyvern. Yeah, for some reason people call it wyvern, and I've been hearing it so much that I'm even saying it now. Yeah.
Why, Vern, you say that?
Oh, I'm going to edit that out.
You know that was gold. Do not edit that out.
Yes, I dry brush the tracks on my Wyvern. Um, can you talk about your dry brushing experience?
Yes, actually, I can. Right now, I am actually working on a what I am calling the Ghosts of Prospero army.
Hmm.
Um, and this is an army that is very very simple to paint. There's just a lot to get done,
Okay.
and literally what I'm doing with it is I am priming them white or a mint green color. I am then using Hex Flame, um, followed by the dark blue ghostly wash, and that looks decent. But what really makes the magic on my ghostly models is my dry brushing, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
Because what I would do then is I use a light gray color, and I load it up on a brush, and I then unload it onto a napkin, and I dry brush, and it gives a fantastic effect on them. It kind of really lightens up the areas that need to be a little bit lighter while keeping the areas that need to stay dark and dark green and that ghostly blue. They stay that color. And I'll be honest with you, I am not a savant at painting. It's all the dry brush in this instance that makes these models look so good.
Yeah. I mean, it's a technique that can be used on various different things. Like fur, you can dry brush fur all
Oh
day.
yeah.
Scales, it looks great on scales.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I, for me personally, I think the more texture you have in a model, the better the dry brushing is going to be.
Yeah. Because it picks out all those upraised layers, and
Yeah.
it only gets those upraised layers. Now the best thing about dry brushing, you can go out and buy a special brush if you want to, but I use old brushes
Hmm.
for dry brushing. In fact, I think 97% of the community uses old brushes for dry brushing.
I remember one of the best questions I ever saw on the forum. Someone said, "Where do I buy old brushes for dry brushing?"
Yeah. Well, actually, and I want to be on my Ghost Army. I saw a tutorial the other day about using makeup brushes for dry
Hmm.
brushing.
Yeah.
So I finally found a 93-cent brush. I'm going to try that out. I've actually got a group of eight guys I'm looking at right now that are going to be on the painting table a little bit later, and I'm going to test out that dry brush and see how I like it.
And also, if you see Foster with some blush on, you know what's that about.
That means Senpai finally noticed me.
Oh, senpai.
But yeah, no, if you are a brand new painter, one of the very first techniques that I would recommend for anybody is putting dry brushing into your wheelhouse.
Yeah, you won't regret it.
You won't. It's a technique that you know, I've heard of a lot of different techniques for painting models. I've heard of the wet palette, which I personally have never done. I've heard of, people literally dipping their models in lacquer. I've never dipped a model. I know that's Army Painter's big thing is, paint it, coat it, dip it, whatever. I've never done that, but and it that goes true for almost every painter. But there is one technique that I have always heard every painter has done, and that is dry brushing.
Yeah.
So I recommend it. I know you recommend it. So painters out there who aren't dry brushing, you need to, because it will possibly save somebody's life
Or your eyes, one of the two.
or your eyes. No guarantees though.
But this is gonna be a short episode. We just want to talk to you guys real quick about some painting techniques. I know a lot of you probably listen to the podcast and paint, so paint on, my friends, paint on.
Yep. And we will see you guys next time.
Yeah, and as always, the Emperor protects.